So tell us right from the beginning.
Okay, well, where do I start? I grew up in Hamilton, Ontario. I went to Westdale High School, and I like to call myself a strategic procrastinator because I like to have fun, but I also like to make my parents proud and make myself proud by always getting good grades and being involved in extracurricular activities. Some of those extracurricular activities were sports, and some of them were also drinking and drug use. So, in grade 9 and 10, I chose the latter of the extracurricular activities, and in grade 11 and 12, I chose the more academic extracurricular activities. So I got my grades up for university. I got into university, did the same thing at Guelph University, where I kind of partied a lot, but still got everything done that I needed to, and then I graduated with honors with a degree in international development in 2012. So, I didn't really think any of my drug and drinking was a problem because I always managed to have a job. I paid my way through school. I did get a DUI in 2009, and that was kind of a wake-up call for me. But not long after did I just start drinking, and I didn't have a car, so I was like, well, I can't get another DUI. It wasn't really enough to change, but it was enough to never drink and drive again because I was blessed in how I got caught. And I think I wanted to get caught because for some reason I couldn't make myself stop. And I guess that's kind of where the addiction started. So after I graduated university, I traveled to Indonesia. Because my degree was in international development, I got to go on a lot of international trips to kind of put what I learned in school into practice. So Indonesia, Peru, I did a trip abroad in Costa Rica, and then I did some traveling in Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. And I was always an experienced person. Like, this was not a new thing for me. Instead of Christmas presents that were wrapped and put under the tree, I asked for plane tickets. I never really wanted things. Like, that thing was a plane ticket because I just love meeting new people. I love seeing new scenery. And I really thought that people in other countries could contribute so much to my growth and development. And it did. We're so blessed here in Canada. We have so many things all the time. In excess, we have so much stuff. And just seeing how happy people were in other countries with so much less kind of shaped my perspective and who I wanted to be as a person and what I wanted to value. And after I traveled a little bit, I moved to Toronto in 2013, sorry. And so I was building a social media business at the time and also drinking and doing drugs. I was living in an area where this was prevalent. Again, it's no excuse, but this was even more normalized by the kinds of people that I was hanging out with. I would meet people in the hallway and they'd be like, hey, do you want to come into our condo and do a line? And I'd be like, okay, sure, and then you'd go downstairs and there'd be a party in the lobby and you'd walk across the street to the bar and, oh, there's a bag of cocaine on the ground. Okay, I'm going to pick it up and do it. Not the smartest play, but that's how prevalent it was. And it didn't really affect my work up until 2015. And so as I was building this business, it was pretty flexible. So I could schedule my party days, right? I knew I could go out at night and party and I would do work during the day. And then I'd meet people at night while I was partying. And then I'd get all these deals and whatever. It's not like I didn't get deals by partying like I did. But, this wasn't a very sustainable approach. And then, when something happened with my family, my family got separated, and this was very challenging for me because we all love each other so much. And we had been a family of 5 for almost 30 years, right? So when my dad actually decided to part ways, and, they knew how much it was hurting the kids, and it was hard. And this was the first kind of trauma that I'd ever been through in my life. I had one grandparent pass away. All my other grandparents are still alive. I'd never been in any situation of abuse or anything like that. So this was the first hard hit because, again, you love them so much and you don't like to see them in pain. And clearly they don't want to see you in pain. So I didn't know how to handle it. And so I turned to the one thing that I knew the most, and that was alcohol and cocaine. So while I'd been a seasoned drinker and partier, it now turned into a medicated type of use. So I would get up. I would get up in the morning sometimes and go to the bar, and just like have mojitos by the bar in the middle of summertime. And then 2 or 3 o'clock rolls around, then I'd be messaging my dealer, and dealer would be there by 4:30 and be hitting lines at 5 o'clock. Sometimes it would start even sooner. Sometimes we'd go to bars and do key bumps in the bathroom in the middle of the day. Like I couldn't go to a Raptors game without having cocaine on me and doing cocaine in the bathroom at the Scotiabank. Like that's how bad it got. Like I needed it for every social thing that I did. And so while I was growing my business, like I knew it was a problem. I showed up, at this point I'd like shown up to a couple family events just like completely annihilated from the night before, you know, just having not slept. Like there was one time I think I was still high on MDMA, and my Nana like just started crying because I couldn't even form a sentence. And then this spread like wildfire throughout my whole family, and I was like, okay, like then I got defensive, and I was like, well, I'm not going to these family things anymore if you guys are gonna judge me, like whatever, like at least I made it, you know what I mean? When I was in this completely like drunken high state that I was not normal, you know. And so, but again, that didn't really cause me to change. I still liked my scene in Toronto. I still liked the friends, and my business was doing well. So I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to keep doing this. And it was, the Band-Aid solution was helping me get through what was going on with my family. I mean, clearly not, but that's what I thought. That's the lie it tells you, right? It fabricates recovery. And then what happened next? Oh yeah, so it's July. No, it's the fall, or like the fall, almost winter of 2014. And then I meet this person through my business. And like I just gotten out of a relationship, but I was still casually dating. That was like when Tinder was like all the rage, and you're like, oh, whatever. Like there's no such thing as real relationships at this point. They're all just like casual. And that was, again, normal, right? You could be seeing like 3 or 4 people and go on different dates every night. Like that. So at the same time, you're dating like a lot of different people who you barely know, and this is now normal. So, but I didn't meet him on a dating app. I met my co-accused through like our company's Instagram profile. So he was like, oh, like I need help building my social media account. Do you want to come up here and meet us? I'm like, okay, sure. Like I've always been very like driven. So instead of me just having a meeting over the phone or something, I'd be like, I'm coming there. You know, like I really value the face-to-face meetings, and I always have. And that was something that kind of set me apart from other people, is that I would drive 2 hours in rush hour to meet you today, you know, because I want to meet you, and that's going to show the effort that I'm going to put in. So, and I hate talking. Like I like talking on the phone, but at the same time, I like being in person. You can really see how a person is, or so you think, right?
Yes, so you think.
So I went up there. It was like in North Toronto, and he had this business that helped put like coats on, like helped paint cars, and then I guess he like bought and sold supposedly new or used vehicles. And so he's like, yeah, I really want to showcase my business. And I'm like, okay. So we worked together, and we developed this like casual relationship. It wasn't physical, really. It was just like very flirtatious, and like he's like, oh, I really have feelings for you. And then he started buying me things that I didn't really like. First, he started doing general nice things, like, oh, I'm going to walk your dog for you. Oh, I want to help you with this. Are you okay? How are you? What's going on? And I opened up to him about what was going on in my family. Because I was like, oh, like, maybe he'll like listen. And it turns out he was from Hamilton. And then he started buying me things that I didn't really want. And I'm like, okay, why are you buying me this sound system? You know, I'm like, I don't need it. I have one. You bought me a watch that has no battery in it that I didn't even want. And then you bought me like a TV. Like I kept the TV because I've used the TV element. But just like random things. And then he didn't drink or use drugs at all. Like at all. And he's like, yeah, no, I haven't. I used to, but not anymore. And he knew how much that I was using. And then he asked me in the summer of 2015 if I wanted to like go on a trip with him. And like I'd traveled a lot with my previous boyfriends. Like it was no problem there. Like sometimes it was safer than traveling alone, right? Mm-hmm. And it was always fun. I was like, why not? Okay, sure, let's go. Like I'd known him for months now at this point. And then he's like, but I just got to ask you something in person first. And I was like, what is it? What is it? Like, I didn't know if it was about his home life. It was very bizarre because I knew that he was married, but he said he was separated, but I didn't actually know the true nature of like what his relationship was. And I didn't like want to disturb anything, but he was telling me that, oh, like this, you know, he's like, we're done, like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, because, like, I didn't want to be that, like, home wrecker. You know, I had that conscience. He's like, no, like, we're done, whatever. And I'm like, okay, like, if you're sure. And then he asked me to go on the trip, and I said, okay. And then, so the other part to the story is that throughout these months, he had somehow acquired, like, a so-called BMW. And he's like, oh, I got this really cool car for you, at a great price. Like, I saved it just for you, because I was looking for, like, a new car. And so he's like, okay, like, just if you can just pay me, because it's, like, me and my partner, we split the cost, but, like, I'm saving it just for you. Like, it's great. You're going to look great in it. Like, we'll paint it white, all this stuff. So I paid him up front. And then I never got the car. Like, things just kept happening. He's like, oh, it's the engine. Oh, like, my ex-wife or my wife is at the shop today. Like, you can't come. And this went on for months. And I never got this freaking car. So, like, when someone has 10 G's and, like, you're living in Toronto, like, that's a lot of money, first of all. And second of all, I'm not just going to go away. I'm not just going to be like, oh, you know, like, screw this guy. Like, whatever, screw the 10 grand. Like, that's, no. So that's kind of like how he kept me strung along, was because he knew that I wouldn't go anywhere until I got it, right? And I, like, made him send me the ownership papers and all this stuff. And then, so let's go back to the discussion about the trip. So that was, like, the other side. And so we're talking about this so-called trip, and he comes over and he brings me a bottle of wine, and it's 11 a.m. I'm still kind of drunk from the night before. And then he's like, I'm going to be bringing some drugs back with me. And he's like, don't worry, like, I've done it before. Like, do you want to do it with me? And I said, no. And then I went out that night, and then he left. He's like, okay, sorry, I asked. And then I went out that night, and I was drunk. He knew that I was going out. He knew that I was, like, it was like 11 o'clock at night. He's like, okay, baby, I promise, like, even if you don't want to do it, like, you don't have to do anything. Just come as my girlfriend, and the car will be yours. Ready to go, everything will be fixed, I promise, like, when we get back. And I'm like, okay, like, here I was, like, feeling brave, you know, 11 o'clock at night, definitely a bunch of drinks in me, that, like, a bit of risk in me comes out, that, like, screw it, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna believe him. And then I ended up, like, getting home that night, like, 2:30 in the morning, sending him a picture of my passport, like, really late, like, not even thinking, clearly. And then he immediately booked the tickets. Like, he's like, okay, we're leaving, like, within a couple days. And so-and-so's going to take us to the airport, and we're going to go to Puerto Rico, and this is what's going to happen. And throughout these couple days, I'm just, like, asking him all these questions, and I'm very unsure, because I'm not drunk the whole time. Like, I know I was drinking a lot, but I wasn't using cocaine 24/7. I wasn't drinking 24/7. It was just, like, more of a binge cycle. So there's definitely times where I was like, oh my God, I don't know if this is a good idea. And then I would just go out at night, and then my worries would be gone. And so we actually planned to leave, 2 days from then. And it was like he instantly booked it and was like, okay, this is where we're going. And then, so the first warning sign happened when, well, not the first, I'm just like the 12th, but, like, you know, we get to the airport and we're going to somewhere, like, totally different, because he didn't even show me, like, the copy of the tickets when he got them. And then we're going to this place called St. Lucia, and I'd never heard of that in my life. And he's like, no, like, it was definitely just your drinking. And I was like, I don't think it was my drinking. Like, I did cocaine. Like, I have the text messages. Like, my, like, lie to myself is that cocaine helped me remember more. And it did. Like, it made me sharper. Like, I was never that drunk girl at the bar because I was always high. So I always, like, maintained my composure. Like, I was never, like, bleh, like, sloppy. That wasn't me, right? Because I was always, like, thinking. And we were going to a completely different place when we got there. And then he just told me that it was my drinking and drug use. And then I believed him, because I was like, whatever, we're already here. And board the plane, go to St. Lucia. And, you know, we start drinking, like, as soon as we got there. And we go jet skiing the first day for, like, 2 hours. And this is actually kind of funny, because, like, my legs after the jet skiing for 2 hours, like, when you don't work those muscles in your legs for so long, your legs are sore. I could barely walk. So this plays into part into, like, the end of the trip. And then on the Wednesday, so we're going out for dinner, having fun. Like, he's like, oh, do you want drugs? Like, he buys me drugs. I'm like, well, yeah. Because, like, I know what we're there to do, or at least I know what he's there to do. And I know I'm not 100% comfortable with this, but I'm just, like, I really wanted that escape, you know? That's where my greed came in. That's where my instant gratification, that need for instant gratification came in. You know, we're so used to getting everything instantly these days, with, like, whether it's phones, emails, like, yeah, that's why I was like, you know, I want an escape and I'm gonna go. And that was my selfishness. And ultimately what led me to what happens next. So then on the Wednesday, We're sitting in the hotel room. It's the middle of the day, and he's like, "Okay, our friends are coming to pick us up, and you're coming in the car with me because it's time to go to work." Yeah, and I'm like, "Work?" And he's like, did you really think it was just gonna be me? You think it's all gonna be fun and games? Like, you have to get in the car. And I was just sitting there. I was like, I didn't freak out. I just sat there and I was like, oh. You know, because I knew that, like, it was my fault. I was still mad because I knew I'd been tricked, but I knew that I was in another country. And I definitely think I misled him. I definitely misled him in saying, like, yeah, I'll go on this trip with you. Maybe I was blaming myself even more at this point. But he's like, yeah, no, you're getting in the car and you're going to be bringing drugs back with me. And so these people pick us up from the hotel in the middle of the day, and we go. I don't even look at my surroundings because, like I'm already in this. Like, I'm supposed to be his girlfriend here. Like, I'm supposed to be, that ride or die, whatever. We all want to be like that ride or die. Instead, it was like ride and go to jail. So that was what happened to me. But so we go up this hill, and there's these people in a house, and there's a woman there, and there's piles of like bricks of cocaine in the walls. So I think I know it's like a stopover point. Like, it comes from South America, and then people bring it up, and then there's like people like me who bring the littler amounts bit by bit into Canada or wherever it's going. And so then this lady like takes my measurements, and then she's like, okay, so after this we're gonna go shopping, and we're gonna go to this strip mall, and we're gonna go and find you a dress that's gonna kind of cover everything. I'm like, okay, like in this mousy little voice, like I'm just like, okay. And so then we all go in the car together. There's about 4 of us, and we go to this mall and park the car, go into a store, and there's, these tropical, like, they're like very cheap marketplace stores, and she's like, pretend like you're picking out dresses, but I'm gonna pick one out for you, and that's gonna be the one that you're gonna get, and I'm gonna give you money for this dress. So she gives me money, and I go buy this. Like, I pick out something, and I even try on some dresses as if I like them. Like, this whole charade. And then eventually she's like, oh, this would look great on you. And so that's the one that I pick. We buy the dress. She actually keeps it with her. And then they drop us off back at the hotel. And at this point, I'm just like freaking out. But I'm not really showing it because he's like trying to get me excited about it. He's like, don't worry, everything will be fine. Nothing will happen. Don't you love me? Like, all this stuff. And I'm like, of course, cocaine and alcohol. Sure, I love you. Yeah, of course I love you. All right, of course I'll help you do this. And at this point, I'm getting messages from his like so-called ex-wife. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is the part where I know things are like really weird. Like, then I started thinking, like, is she part of this? Like, why are you messaging me? Like, why does she know I'm here? And she starts making up these things saying, oh, like she's like, this isn't time to party. Like, his father's really sick and there's all this stuff going on. I'm like, what is going on? And then I don't remember what he told me. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And so then I just started going to the pool all by myself and just drinking. And I even like went out by myself a lot because I was just mad. And he didn't like me going very far, but I definitely treated him a little bit differently. He was never like abusive. He never hit me. He never hurt me. He never threatened to like punch me in the face. He wasn't gonna, you know what I mean? But I know that he had that look in his eye that was like, you're doing this, and I didn't want to see where it went, right? So I was like, okay. And so then on the Fridays when we leave. And so at all inclusives, there's flights that are in the morning usually, and then I think there's some like late at night. But ours, like, we left early, relatively early. And so like I wasn't drinking that day. And I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I didn't like tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone because at the end of the day, he got me to trust him, right? So, and it wasn't that big of a deal. And so we go to this house again before we go to the airport. And now that there's like 2 kilograms of cocaine sewn perfectly into this like spandex, it's like piece of spandex. So then I put it on, and he's got it too, and I put it on under my dress, and then put the dress on, and then I have like a little cardigan. And so it's like squishy, and so my legs are still sore from this jet skiing, and so I can't even walk properly. Like, it was just so sketchy. It was so botched. And like, I knew they said it, you couldn't see the drugs, but like I could feel it. I could see it. Like, I'm pretty small, so anything you put anything under there, like, it's like a box of Kleenex or something, and it's stuffed underneath. And it was squishy, and I knew my butt wasn't that big. And I didn't like it frumping around, and like, I don't know, it just didn't feel right. But again, I tried to hide it as best I could, because at the end of the day, I felt like I was doing this for him. Like, he needed this more than I did, right? There was something like so desperate about him that like clearly he needed this trip to happen, and he really needed me to bring these drugs back for him. So yeah, I was gonna do it. That was it. And I was at this point confident that nothing could go wrong. Not completely confident, but the alcohol definitely helped. But I was sober that day, so I was definitely not feeling confident when we went to the airport. And then I also had a carry-on backpack, and I was like, well, I don't know, like, can I put it in the backpack? Like, at least, like, when we get to Pearson, like, please, can I just put it in the backpack? He's like, okay, at Pearson, when we get to Pearson, you'll go to the bathroom, take what's off underneath your dress, put it in your backpack, and give me the backpack. So this was like, okay, this is like a sense of relief. Okay, I'm not gonna go through customs with drugs on me. This is like foolproof, right? If I'm gonna do this, like, I want to be able to take it off in the bathroom, and you can carry them through customs, because I know that I'm not gonna be good at this. And so we get on the plane, it's still very uncomfortable, and we get to Pearson finally, and this is like, it's a pretty long flight, I would say. Like, by the time we got there, it was like 8 at night, I think. And he doesn't really give me any guidance on what to do. Like, I didn't know if I was like his girlfriend or not. And so we walked through there's the first set of customs there. And then I didn't walk up with him, because I was like, well, I'm not your wife. I don't even know if you're still married anymore. Is this gonna be weird if I walk up with you? Like, are we friends? Like, completely sketchy. And because he hasn't really told me the truth, and I don't know if the border officials know the truth. I don't know the last trip he took. So I just went up alone after him. And, oh, sorry, this was right after he told me that he wasn't gonna take the backpack from me. So now I'm just pissed. Right, I'm like, you tricked me. Now I am responsible for carrying these drugs through customs, and I'm freaking out right now. So this added level of stress definitely contributed to my very obvious body language that something was not right. I couldn't hide it for the life of me. And so now I'm just like, fury like envelops me. Like, I'm just like, fuck you. You know, sorry if I can swear on this, but that's what I was feeling. Like, I was pissed, but still trying to keep it together as much as I could, because I didn't want to like make it look like I was gonna rat us out, because I wasn't, because they weren't my drugs. They were these people's drugs, so I didn't know. And I knew that I was in the middle of a very dangerous operation, and I was just gonna do my best to get through. Yeah. So after we went up to the first kiosk, and they scribbled that little number on your thing, you never know what it means. And I've never been called into secondary in my life at Pearson. I've traveled to 14 countries multiple times, never been secondary. The only time I was secondaried was when I was coming from Colombia to Miami. And like, obviously, like, that's a heat bag trail, right? But I had nothing on me then, so I was confused, and I was like, you know. And so this is like, okay, like, now they mean business. Like, they know something's up. And so we both get, you know, directed to go to our right, and then we're immediately separated. And then as I'm walking up to the kiosk where I'm supposed to go, he whispers at me, he's like, pull your dress down. And this is something that didn't even make sense, because my dress was like it was past my knees in length. So I was like, what do you mean? And now you want me to do more shifty movements right in front of the secondary officers? So I was like, this is so botched. Like, I don't know what to do at this point. Like, I was like, here we go. Like, this is it. Like, I know I'm not getting out of secondary. So, immediately separate us, and then they're like, oh, like, where are you traveling from? And they're like, what's your relationship to him? And I was like, a friend? Like, I was like, oh, because he never told me what to say. He's like, just my friend. Like, the most mousiest voice ever. And then they asked me about my work, like what I claimed on my taxes. And then they asked me if I like to party. And I was like, well, what do you mean? They're like, oh, so do you like to do like recreational drugs? And I was like, yeah, I like to do recreational drugs. And then they asked me, oh, so when was the last time you did that? And then I didn't tell them that I did them on the trip, because I was like, maybe I should not say that, because maybe then they'll know. As if they didn't know already. But I was like, oh, in Vegas, like Las Vegas. Because I actually was in Vegas 2 weeks before for Bachelorette. And then they're like, oh, okay, Mr. Brown, we're just gonna go through your suitcase. Like, no worries, like we're just gonna check it. And so I'm just staring at the floor. I don't think I looked at him. I think I just stared straight ahead. And I was wearing a cardigan, like a sweater too. So I think they noticed, in the paperwork it said that they noticed something underneath. And I guess something that smugglers do very often is wear like because you're coming from a hot country, why are you wearing a sweater? Anyway, and then they're like, Miss O'Brien, so there's nothing in your suitcase, but we need to ask you, do you have drugs on you? And I was like, uh-oh, like, I've never been coached on what to say for this. I'm trying to keep a straight face, like, to the best of my ability. And so I didn't answer. I really thought about what I was supposed to say. And I guess I took so long thinking in my own head that they had to ask me again. And then the color of my face just went white, like completely white. And in my mind, I was like, you know what? I don't know much about how serious the situation is, but I know enough about the law that honesty at this point is gonna help me. And I know I'm already caught. Like,
Yeah.
so I said yes. And then they're like, okay, well, you're under the arrest for the importation of narcotics into Canada. And I think there might have been other questions, but at this point I was just sober blackout, if that's a thing. Like, you're just like, oh my God. And so I got arrested in front of all these people, like the people that were inside secondary. And like, I tried to be honest for like as long as I could. Like, I wasn't gonna go screaming, oh, help me, he made me do it. Because at the end of the day, he convinced me to do it. Yes, he convinced me, for sure. But he didn't hold a gun to my head. So, you know what? I wasn't gonna pull that card because I knew I had to take responsibility. I didn't really fully take responsibility until much later on, when I really found out how much trouble I was in. And then, so I had to sit in a holding cell. And then there was a CBSA officer that came in and took the drugs and tested them. And then I had to get formally arrested by the RCMP. And so I was sitting in like this big cell, and I was tired, and they took my fingerprints and pictures, and they took my suitcase, computer, everything. And I was like, you know what, go ahead, guys. Like, you take it. There's nothing about me planning this glamorous vacation from hell in that computer. I thought it would help me. Right? So I was like, yeah, go ahead, take it. I still haven't got it back, but that's fine because it's old. And then, so after I was arrested, I talked to the free lawyer. And I'm talking to the lawyer on the phone, like, I'm gonna get out of there. I'm like, yeah, he said, like, if anything happened, like, he would take care of it. You know, like, I'm just his girlfriend, like, I was just helping him out. And he said he would take the rap for it. And he's like, you're in a lot of shit, O'Brien. And I was like, okay. And still, I didn't really knew what that meant. And then the RCMP arrests me, and then I get taken to the local, like, the York police station overnight. And then in the morning, I'm transported to Vanier Correctional Center in Milton for women. So I'm like, still sitting in a holding cell, more holding cells, more handcuffs, more paddy wagons, and now I know I'm not going home. And it wasn't until the weekend where I'm sitting in Vanier where I'm finding out now I'm really not getting out unless my parents come and put up a bail for $50,000. Yeah, not cash, but in assets. And my family is still pretty fragile at this point. The reason that I was away, like escaping, is because of everything that was going on. And it was, you know, they actually came together to get me that day with the lawyer. And so that just like shows you how strong our family was, no matter what was going on. And they still like loved each other in different ways, but not romantically, right? So they still loved each other enough to support me and knew that something must be wrong. Like I was never into crime. I never like stole. I never was violent. Like I never defrauded anyone. Like not just like violent crimes, but there's so many other kinds of crime, and I never did any of those. Like I had the DUI and then I stopped. And yeah, so they got me out, they put up the bail, and that was when I learned that I had a new set of conditions. And this was gonna be my life for the next 2.5 years. And that was that I was gonna be living with my mom, who had to put up like herself as an assurity. So did my father and my 2 aunts. And so I had to have written notes everywhere I went. Like, so I had to move all my stuff and live back in with my mom, and I had to drive to Toronto to work all the time, and I couldn't really go to fund things. Like I had to have written permission slips everywhere I went like a child. And because I've always been a very busy person, sometimes my mom would be, like I'd tell my mom what I was doing that day, and then she'd date it and sign, like, I give Emily permission to do this. And so she authorized that she knew where I was going for a while. And so I kind of spiraled out of control after I got arrested because I really realized how serious it was, and I was mad because everything that he told me was a lie, but I still talked to him. He messaged me as soon as his parents had to bail him out. He was 38 at the time. His parents were getting older. They had to bail him out. So I guess your so-called wife didn't bail you out. I don't know. Or they didn't have the assets or something. And yeah, so then he messages me, hey, we got to talk. I got to talk to you. And I'm like, what? You know, even though they say no communication, I'm just like, I don't know what to, like, I have no one else to talk to. I shouldn't have done it, but like, I just didn't know who else to talk to. And he's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, everything's going to be fine. Everything is going to be fine. Don't worry. This will all be over soon. And I'm like, well, can you write in a letter of apology to my parents? Like, yes, I went on this trip knowing what was going to happen. And yes, I got greedy. But you put me at a huge risk. My family at a huge risk. And he still tried to downplay it, like everything would be fine. I still believed it for a while. And it wasn't until I started kind of like, I started a new relationship with someone that I lived close to in my neighborhood, and until I really pried myself away from him and his like manipulation that I really realized how messed up the whole thing was. How delusional I was being. Like, I was still driving around this guy's car after I'd been arrested. Like, he's like, oh, take my car to this. And I still never got the other car because when I had the lawyer, like criminal lawyer, I was like, I want this freaking car back. He's like, Emily, you don't want that car back. That's like a drug car now. So I think like the money that I gave him for this so-called car, he actually took it and bought the drugs at a cheap price and sent them, like, he brought it with him. So, and then bought these drugs at a low price, and he's planning on like flipping it. So I was just, left out of all that, never got the car. And so 2.5 years on bail, lots of ups and downs. And it wasn't until I got arrested a second time, because after I first got arrested, he told me that I could blame him, so I was blaming him, right? He's like, this is all my fault. And I was like, well, yeah, it is. And so I got really mad at the conditions that I had, because I knew that I'd been a good person for like many, many years of my life. And the country basically on paper was saying, like, we don't think you're a good enough person to even let you out of the house without a note. And I was like, well, screw you. Like, it just like felt really insulting, and it felt like all my years of like being a good person were worth nothing. So I drank a lot when I got back, and I spent like a good chunk like holed up in my room, like drinking Tito's vodka. And then September, I kind of started to pick myself out of it. But I still drank for sure. And then in February of 2016, I went out to get cigarettes, and like with my boyfriend, and I wasn't allowed without a note, but I was like, oh, it's just around the corner. I won't get caught, it's fine. Again, alcohol telling you lies that everything's fine. And I live in a neighborhood, my mom lives in a neighborhood that has a lot of MAC students. So on a Friday night or whatever night it was, there's sometimes cops, and I guess they scan my license plate and were like, oh, this girl's like actually on house arrest right now. Like, what is she doing out? And then they arrested me there. And then I was thrown into the Hamilton jail for a weekend. My mom had to put up another $1,000 in bail, and my lawyer was like, Emily, we can get you out this time, and this one time. This is a very serious charge. It's like one of the most serious charges in the criminal code. If you mess up again, they're not going to let you out, and we're not going to be able to prove to the Crown that you actually are a good person, that you just were really struggling, and you made a bad decision that, was the result of another bad decision and bad decisions before that. But we know that you weren't this orchestrator of this massive drug smuggling operation. Like, that's not you, but you can't prove it when you're locked up. And so that was kind of like my wake-up call. So the next little while I spent just building my business as much as I could. Like, I still went out at night. Like, I did less, like, I definitely didn't do drugs for a while, but then before I went into prison, I kind of did, because I was like, screw it. And I was honestly out all the time just building my business, and because my business was creative and it was social media, I was able to go to different places. So I created little avenues of work for myself. I made myself present at events, like, so that I could go to them. Like, it would be very, very different if I worked for an employer whose address was at this place, and you can only be at work, right? You can only be at this one place. So it's like, okay, this is like the time where I have to be the most creative I've probably ever been, so that I can show to not just myself, but so many people around me, like, what I'm capable of. But I didn't want to tell them, right? I also had legal bills coming in like crazy, so I had to work around the clock, and I had 2 employees. I had to give up my condo. I lost my dog. Like, that was like heartbreaking. I had to give up my dog because, when I lived in Liberty Village, I got the dog because I was like, I don't know, it's like another like animal therapy. Like, it was Bernie's mountain dog, and my aunt ended up taking her because when I lived in Hamilton, I was back and forth to Toronto all the time, and I wasn't really home, so it wasn't fair. And she was a big dog, so I've already overwhelmed my mother enough with the fact that I was just arrested and thrown into jail. So maybe the least I could do is not whine, and like, obviously I was sad about it, but I knew it was the right thing to do for me and the dog and my family. And so she lives at a dog farm now, but like with my aunt, so it's good. Like, I still see her, but that was hard. And I was like, I'm gonna get her back. And like, no, she's happy there. So it was just really stressful for my family, like those 2.5 years, because there's so many meetings with the lawyer that just seemed to be chit chat about nothing, and I knew I was getting billed for it. So then I'm like, what am I paying for? Like, and some meetings I wouldn't even show up to because I was still mad. So we met with the lawyers, for 2.5 years, kept on going. So the first part of that was getting my case separated from my co-accused, because initially they wanted to charge us together with the combined amount of drugs. And that would have been 5 kilograms combined, and that's a whole lot of drugs. Like, that's 8 to 10 years. So at first my lawyer was like, no, we're gonna meet and get you separated from him first and foremost. So they did that, and then they got to meet with the Crown prosecutor, and then I had to bide some time because I had to go to these rehab programs, right? I had to get reference letters. I couldn't, if they're like, if you want to go to jail right now, like, if you want to plead guilty and not put any work into it, they're going to give you more time. So that's why they wanted to sort of let me prove myself over the course of, these 2.5 years, which I was able to do. So after what seemed to be like 20 meetings, my lawyer informed me that they had met with the Crown prosecutor and agreed to do a joint submission. So in this case, the judge, what they told me was that the judge is most likely to agree with the joint submission than to not agree. Whereas if my defense lawyer had submitted, we think she should get 2 years, and the prosecutor had been like, no, 6, the judge could easily go with 6. But because they looked at everything involving the case, my background, my lack of criminal history, they knew that going at the lower end would be beneficial for me and society, but also while respecting the law and what had happened. So that was, finding out I had 4 years was a relief. So, but you still don't really know. The judge can still change their mind, but because my lawyers had worked really hard to meet with a certain prosecutor and then meet with a certain judge, because not all judges are different, right? Some are more conservative. So they met with a judge that was familiar with drug cases and the dynamics surrounding drug cases, right? And it isn't just like, oh, mandatory minimum, paint everyone with the same brush, right? So that really helped in my case. When I finally found out I was going to prison, I was mad at first, but then I knew that it would actually be good for me, because being the resourceful person that I was, I researched where I was going. And then I also managed to, by chance, meet someone at a work event. So it's a good thing I was creating these events. It's a good thing I was being present, because at one of these events that I said I would speak at, I met someone else who'd done time for the exact same crime as me. And she ended up being awesome. She ended up like coaching me, like telling me everything. She talked to my mom. So that was like my helping hand prior to going in. And so I knew I was ready. I knew it was the beginning of the end. And like I saw jail as one thing, which like provincial jails are like not rehabilitative at all. Like, they're notoriously underfunded. There's drug use is rampant. The spaces are so small and tiny. But the place that I was going, it was kind of more like a camp. Like, there's more open space. There's more things to do. So I knew that I could take my time there and use it very, very productively. And I knew that I could also create something there. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I made that decision going in that it was going to be a time for me to change and reinvent myself. Like, still be the same happy Emily that I always was, but just without all the bullshit substances, without all the, the excuses and things like that. So because I knew I could produce great work. I'd produce great work even when I was on bail, like going through this whole thing. You know, I worked with like famous athletes and I got awards and things like that. So it's not like I was this drunk. It wasn't the case. It was just for that one time in that summer in 2015, it was bad, 100%.